in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
show up at 100%.
Hey you! Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Hey youngers, it's me, Jen Glantz, back with another solo episode. This week's topic is one of those topics that is so incredibly awkward to talk about: money. But first, I have to apologize. For some reason, New York City and podcasting just do not go hand in hand. I'm sitting here recording, and there's, of course, construction outside, which would be totally okay, but this is the third podcast interview I've recorded today in New York City in 3 separate locations, and in every single location, there was construction happening in the background. Just have to let you know about that. So if you ever come to New York City and you want to record something or film something, good luck to you. There will 100%, no matter what time of day it is, be some sort of ambulance or siren or people doing a construction project happening when, of course, you want to record. Thank you all for coming back and listening to another episode of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. As always, I am so grateful that you're here, and it would mean the world to me if you can drop a review in iTunes. Why do I keep asking for that? Well, it helps the show get bigger and bigger and bigger. It helps us bring in more guests, and it allows the show to just keep happening. One other thing I like to remind you, come hang out with us in the You're Not Getting Any Younger secret Facebook group. There is so many incredible people in there sharing incredible resources and tips and tricks, and it's free and no one's trying to sell you anything. So come hang out with a bunch of people who are just like you, who also want to help you. It's like having tons of cool virtual friends. Hope to see you there. All right, today we're talking about money and finances. I've recently become super obsessed with personal finance because I feel like for almost 30 years of my life, I've neglected that area completely. I had a Bank of America checking and savings account. I had 2 credit cards. That was practically it. I never had a 401k because I started my first 401k actually like the last month I worked a full-time job, and then I got laid off, so there was nothing in that 401k. And then since then I haven't started a 401k. So my finances were pretty simple but also pretty bare. And the other thing that I had a really big problem with was opening up about my finances. I had best friends in my life who, I never told how much money I made or how much money I had in the bank, which you're probably listening to this right now, and most of you are probably like, yeah, me neither. Why is it so hard to open up about your money? And I'm saying this, and I'm not saying that I'm better at this. Like, I'm not even going to tell you all what I make or how much is in my bank account. I can't bring myself to even do that, and I'm sorry, but it's such an awkward and weird topic, and there's such a stigma around being so hush-hush about your financial situation. The first person I ever showed my finances to was my boyfriend, and I think about 2.5 years into our relationship, we sat down with our computers and paper and pen, and we showed each other all of our finances, all of the money we have in the bank or the money we have invested, which I had none in any type of investment, and he had some, all of our credit cards, all of our debt, everything, our credit score. And I remember having this conversation with him. We've talked about probably every single thing in the entire world, but during this finance conversation, I was sweating. Like, I was soaking wet in my own stress sweat. I was so nervous. I felt like, I think what made me the most nervous was just telling a person what I had and what I didn't have, because you don't talk about these things. So you're like wondering what the benchmark is. At 30, should you have X amount in savings? Like, I don't know. And I was really terrified not only of admitting that I didn't know, but also then figuring out what my mistakes were. Because when you don't show anyone anything, you don't realize what you're doing wrong. The very first thing I showed my boyfriend was my Bank of America checking and savings account. And immediately his jaw dropped. And he said to me, "Oh my God, I cannot believe you have every dollar to your name in these accounts." And I was like, why? I've had Bank of America for my whole life. My family has it. Like, you just sort of choose a bank and then you just stick with it. You don't question it. He's like, "This is crazy because you're only getting like 0.01 interest on all of the money to your name. And that's insane." And I thought to myself, like, what interest? Like, I thought that was normal. I had absolutely no idea. And he's like, "Oh my God." And he pulled up his checking and savings account, which is at another bank, and he's getting 2.2% interest on his money, where I was getting 0.01. That's like absolutely nothing. I think in one whole year I didn't even make like $100, and he's making thousands of dollars every single year. And we had the same amount of money in the bank, so it was crazy. That was a huge, huge, huge financial mistake that I never would have known about if I didn't show my finances to him. So after that conversation, I moved my money into another bank, and I'm not getting paid by this bank. They're not a sponsor of this show, but I am more than happy to put in the show notes the name of this bank so that you can check them out if you want. I don't have a financial background. Every piece of advice I'm giving you is harmless and it's just from my experience. But I switched to this bank, and in the course of a year, the amount of interest I made was so much more than I made in freaking Bank of America. And what a humongous mistake to have. A couple other mistakes that I made were, of course, not having any retirement fund. I think I started my first retirement fund at age 29. And that's okay, completely. And there are some people I know who don't have any retirement fund at all. And there are others who have had one since they were 19. I was the most upset at myself for not having a retirement fund because I think I realized I've been working so hard on being my own boss and pulling in my own money every single month, and not having a retirement fund in my eyes was setting me up for a future of disaster, especially being self-employed. So I think at age 29, that's when I opened my first retirement account. And since I am self-employed, I have my own business, I opened up a SEP IRA, which is for people who have their own businesses and are their own employees. And I started funding that every single month. And that was a huge deal for me because it allowed me to think about my future. Whereas for the past 10 years of my work life in my 20s, I thought about right now, which was a little bit of a mistake. I'm not advising you to start a retirement account, but maybe it's something you want to think about. Another mistake that I made was not being good at budgeting money. And this is one of the things that sort of bothered me a little bit, is that I have tried to have budgets in the past, but I haven't really stuck with them. But another thing that I never really did was save money for something. I just lumped all of my money in one savings account. I thought that most people have one checking, one savings, and that is it. And I was speaking to somebody the other day who was like, no, you could open up as many savings accounts as you want. They don't affect your credit score if you open and close them. It's just for you to have. And a benefit of having multiple savings accounts is that you are able to delegate money in each account for something. So rather than having all of your life savings in one savings account, you could have 4 savings accounts for different types of things that you put money in. So one of those can be an emergency fund, which is so important to do. And I didn't realize this, but you should be putting money in an emergency fund every single month, because what if something humongous happens? Or what if you get laid off? What if, I don't know, you need like a huge thing for a medical expense? Having an emergency fund set aside allows you to be able to visualize and know that you have money set aside for a major issue. Another fund that you can set aside is for a huge life project. For some of you, that might be getting married, having a kid. Others of you, that might be for traveling or for fixing your house. But having a separate savings account is almost like having another piggy bank where every month you're dropping in money for that cause. which allows you, of course, to become accountable, but also visualize where you stand with your money. So that was another big thing I did was I took all of the money to my name and I delegated it into different savings accounts so that I could visualize how much money I had for X, for Y, for Z, and that was super helpful. One of the topics that I've been talking about in the You're Not Getting Any Younger secret Facebook group that was probably one of our most popular topics ever was on people's financial mistakes. And what's cool about this group is it's a bunch of people who don't know each other. You know, most people in the group have never met, but we talk about things that perhaps you wouldn't talk about with other people in your life. And one of the topics that was really popular, again, was talking about those biggest financial mistakes. And I just want to talk about a couple of them that really stood out in my mind. One person in the group mentioned that a big financial mistake they made was taking money out of a fund that their parents set up for them for their wedding. They got taxed on the $32,000 that they took out for their wedding. So they ended up owing the IRS quite a lot of money that year. And that's something I never really thought about. You know, if some of us have parents who set aside a fund for us to use for different things, we have to realize, and again, I'm not an accountant, but we have to realize that when we use that money, it is taxable. It can be taxed on top of our income. So before you take any money out of a fund that was set aside by your parents or things like that, consult an accountant, do your research, just so that you know what your tax situation is going to be like in the future. Another big mistake I heard in the group was people not paying off medical bills. It destroyed their credit for quite some time, and building credit is something that takes a while to build back up. Medical bills are insane. Some of us have been hit with them. I know I have, and there were things that were not my fault. Like, I once got hit with a humongous medical bill because they sent my blood work to New Jersey, to a lab in New Jersey, and I had to pay for out-of-state blood work when I went to the doctor in New York, and I had no clue that that was going to happen. And it's a nightmare to fight it. It's a nightmare to deal with it. I was sent to collections. I had to, pay it off, and it just sucks. Like, medical bills suck. So I can't exactly give you advice on how to deal with them, but I will say try to deal with them because you don't want things interrupting your credit score. Credit score is really important if you want to lease a car or rent an apartment or open up a credit card. A lot of what we use credit scores for is credibility for other things we want to do. One of the other interesting things that we heard in the group was opening up too many credit cards and forgetting to pay them, or just keeping a huge balance on credit cards. Credit cards are great, but of course you have to be careful with them. I think if you're going to open up a new credit card, make sure that you're only spending enough on the card that you can pay off. Acquiring debt on credit cards also will lower your credit score, but it'll also be super stressful because now you're going to be paying interest on top of that money as well, and that could be sort of frustrating and annoying and just really spiral you into a downward spiral of how do I get out of this? The point of this episode today is to just talk about how all of us are a little financially messy, but we won't know that unless we talk about it. My challenge for you is to open up about your finances to one person. This can be anyone. It could be a financial advisor, an accountant, any kind of professional. It could be a best friend. It could be a complete stranger in our Facebook group or just somebody that you meet. But talk about your finances because chances are you're doing something wrong and you will not know that unless you talk about it with somebody else who might be able to share their perspective, their knowledge, their tips, their tricks. Let's work together to make money not awkward anymore because it's something that I personally struggle with, and I do think it held me back for so incredibly long not to be forthcoming and honest about my finances, especially to people who know me so well, like my partner, like my significant other. Thank you so much again for listening to another episode of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. Next week on the show, we have the amazing Lindsay of We Met at Acme Dating podcast. I'm super excited for that episode to drop. Stick with us, new episode every week. Hey you! Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, And join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.